are emotionally in high anxiety. There was a movie that was the title was High Anxiety, and I feel that everywhere. Everybody is in high anxiety, and all these reactions, even when we try to be kind, or when we're pointing something out, even we try to be kind in doing that, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
No.
So we're saying something nice, and we are saying it in a nice way, and still somebody finds a way to go, I just can't believe you're saying that.
Yeah, I have a mixed bag of experiences. I mean, not like, completely all over the spectrum in that regard, but just like what I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but right before you, Lewis, was saying, like I can think of a scenario in my life where I'm just like, why is this person reacting to me this way? Like I mean, I've been, like, I used the word candid earlier. There's times, anytime I'm candid with somebody, I always know there's a possibility, that they're going to take it the wrong way. But I've also been like, I've also convinced myself I was being like oh yeah, there's also been times I've gotten to a point where I don't, it's rare for me to say anything that I feel like, oh man, I shouldn't have said that. Like I can question easily, like, should I have said that? Should I have said that? But it's rare for me to do that. But I think that there were some good points that were brought up by Aziza. Might be how if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, when she's talking about it being a survival reaction when certain situations or certain things happen, and fight or flight, and that does make a lot of sense in this context. I wonder though, does the desire, because one thing I remember that was said in like the purse snatching scenario, she Alari was saying that she wanted to punish the 12, 13-year old to let them know that this was wrong. And that's definitely an understandable, like, it's when somebody wrongs you or is mean to you, of course it's understandable that you don't have patience for them, but is it a survival reaction to want to punish them? Because I think like fight or flight, I've been taught, and it does make sense to me, but I think the want or the desire to punish is something different. I think that's culturally or socially taught. There's more I could say about that, but those are some thoughts that I have right now about
Mm.
that. It ties into what I was saying earlier about, like,
Yeah.
is it ever appropriate to be mean? And I have a hard time seeing how it is, but of course there are certain scenarios where most people would understand you if you are mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's a fine line for sure. It's a fine
I,
line for sure.
I think what's bothering me about this is that we I had asked in the chat before about how do you define nice, or uh, how do you define mean, and several times you talk about being curt. Being curt is not a sign necessarily of being mean. I think when we're talking about protecting our boundaries, if we talk about self-protection, it's not mean to protect yourself. If somebody walks up to me, which happens quite often, and says, "Oh, you have such nice hair, I want to touch it," and they put their hand out, and I said, "Don't touch my hair," that's being curt. It's not being mean. If you don't want somebody to do size, they'll say, "Oh, I didn't know, you didn't say anything," or "I didn't think you meant anything by it." I think
Yeah.
some of the things that you talked about are self-protecting of one's boundaries. And I don't think that's about nice or not nice. That's about what are self-protecting behaviors. And it has nothing to do with my doing anything. I didn't slap her hand away. Sometimes I'd like to, but I didn't slap her hand away and say, "Don't touch me," or "Why are you doing that?" That would not be nice. But if I just say, "Don't touch my hair," or "Please don't touch my hair," or if they
Yeah.
started, well, I sometimes say, "Why are you touching my hair?" I think that's all being nice based on what I could have done and how improper and rude the behavior was.
Yeah, I want to clarify something I'm saying. I'm not disagreeing that, like, being curt maybe is the word, or candid is another word I used. I'm not saying that's mean. And it's not realistic, I don't think, to be nice 100% of the time. Like there's
No,
some
it's not.
situations that you have to set boundaries, but if mean is, and I know we haven't defined these words, if mean is the opposite of nice, like you said, if you take it to a further degree, so, or like if you have a desire to punish somebody, I think there is a difference between wanting to protect yourself and wanting to punish somebody, unless wanting to punish people is a survival instinct. I don't know that it is.
I
Well-
propose the following. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that I think that's probably one of the instances where being mean is okay. Like if somebody's reaching out to touch your hair and slapping their hand away, like it's not about being kind or being nice. That's being nice doesn't mean that you're a floor mat. Like everybody's just gets to walk all over you. Being nice is just, being kind to people when it's a normal day of life. But if somebody takes the initiative to come and touch my hair, yeah, I'm gonna slap your hand away. Don't touch me. Like my personal space. But I agree with Anton about some people have the need to punish. I don't know where it comes from. It's like somebody is cutting you off in line or wherever. It's like, oh no, I'm gonna teach him. And then they slow down their car. I'm gonna teach him a lesson. I'm like, why are you gonna take time to do that? Go about your life, let them figure it out on their own. They cut in line, somebody's gonna eventually, hopefully the authority will tell them, oh no, you cut in line, go back to the back of the line, something else. But it's not upon you to teach other people. They're not your children.
Yeah, there's a guy, there's a philosopher, a Spanish philosopher that said that I am me and my circumstance. So what he was trying to say there is to explain why somebody would slow down purposely to teach a lesson to the guy that was driving, or cut him off, or they feel they cut him off, or whatever. So we are the constant dynamic interplay of history, living history going through time, body-wise, DNA-wise, culture-wise, history-wise. So we are like a packet of information that's being molded by life, and it's being molded by history. And at a moment, when I'm driving, somebody cuts me off, the whole packet, my history of life, and what happened to me 10 minutes ago, my conversation with my boss in the morning, or the fact that I didn't get along with my neighbor, or something happened to me, I lost my job, all of a sudden that is going to dictate my reaction to somebody driving in front of me. So it's a very complex thing, very complex. We are very, very complex. I would add to that any reaction from a human being is always in the spectrum, just like autism is in the spectrum. You can be a little bit autistic or very autistic. You can be very paranoid or very little paranoid. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Everything is in the spectrum. So the reaction to a threat or the reaction to an action is a packet of information that has been, is coming at us. It's a living animal. And it is in the spectrum, and it has a combination of content and packaging, content and container. It's like we want to stop what we perceive as a threat or somebody trying to get into our bubble, and how we do it is another component. So the content is, here's my bubble, don't go through, and how you say it or do it, or how you implement the content, the container, the packaging, is also part of this interplay. So it's a very complicated thing. The least we can say is kindness is a complicated, it's a complicated concept.
So, Luis, can you revise your definition of being kind or being mean? Because in the beginning you proposed that in the polar spectrum of like being non-harmful, to the other side being harmful, and the one in the middle is being neutral or not either.
Mhm.
Is being kind always going to be on one side? Because is it possible to be mean, and by being mean you're actually being kind? like say you yeah, Ellery's example, you could say that she was being mean to that 13-year-old for having snatched her purse. That she
Cannot
was
say that.
being kind because she was teaching the little kid a lesson to not be doing that anymore. That could save him from ending up in jail in the future if he gets into the habit of doing that. So maybe that lesson or that punishment is the kindness in her part. So that blows away your definition of that being kind is being nice all the time.
Yeah,
Because you can kill someone with kindness.
with kindness, rightfully,
So I guess it
equanimously.
depends on the
You can kill somebody
situation, what is
justly.
actually
Yeah.
being harmful or helpful to someone. You
That-
could be helpful by being mean to them, or
in this,
or what would look mean.
yeah,
That's what
I-
parents do,
Somebody
isn't
else.
it? Like when they punish you, they're not that they take away your favorite toy or they make you be grounded in your room. Like they're not being nice, but they're preparing you for life, I guess.
in these conversations, and today's a very special conversation, very different from the tone of what we normally have. We normally talk about the concept of consciousness and how consciousness is between a zero and an elementary particle. But so, I mean, this is very down to earth. This is the human beings at the psychological, emotional, behavioral level, as the individuals in the collective. I always run into this when there are conversations between human beings. There's always this element of that's the way you see it, but somebody else can see it in a different way. And my response to that has always been anymore that my knowledge or my perspective is absolute to me and relative to anybody else. And if it's not absolute to me, I'm really, really in trouble because I don't know what to think. If my own position, if my own views on life and myself and my relationship with others is not clear inside, that means that anything goes in my mind. I'm not really sure what to think or what to do. That's a big trouble. But I have come to conclusions that allow me to think, okay, this is the way I think. This is what I'm going to do. This is going to be my response to life, knowing very well that although I am absolutely agreeing with myself, which is very important, at least I agree. At least I agree with myself. It's a big victory. I know that anyone on the outside is going to say, well, I'm not sure that you're right about that, or this is the way I would do it, et cetera, which I accept always. In this series of 1975, the Kung Fu 1975, the master says to the student, say, uphold your truth while you accept the truth of others. So you are absolute to yourself and you accept the relativity of your absoluteness with regards to anybody else. That, in a sense, helps, if any, soften the relationships, between the bubble, the inside of my bubble and the outside of my bubble. So I'm at least I'm coherent within, and then I try to be coherent with the outside. I don't know if it made any sense.
It would seem to me that it's not 1975, but I think the issue of manners and civility are cultural phenomenon that have been developed so we can even live together. I mean, we might live in a rural area, but we still live together. We don't live in Mars yet. Yes. And I think we've had to develop ways as humans to live among one another. So there has to be some level of at least public acceptance or conformity, public conformity, and agreement around certain types of behaviors.
Civility.
We do have it, even though people think Americans aren't as civil as they could be, but we do I mean, when we pass people in the street, we don't say go to hell. You know, we just pass
Right.
them in the street, just pass them in the street because
So
that's what culture requires.
yeah, at least the typical let's agree to disagree. So civility would allow us to have different views, but still get along. So there is no fight or flight. There's in between, which is let's agree to disagree in a civil way, in a pleasant, polite way. And there, that gray area, that's where we need to kind of define the things. Hey, don't touch my hair. That makes sense. Unless I know you very well and we're friends or whatever. A stranger should not touch somebody's hair, just right off the bat. Why? Because it could be construed as an aggression or some like intrusion into my bubble. So civility and kindness would be like a practical definition of the between the fight or flight. So we don't have to fly from each other. We don't have to fight each other. We can be together and rub into without rubbing into that gray area. So civility and kindness are, I would say, very together. It's enmeshed, and it goes beyond morals, because morals, you say, well, I think this way. Yeah, but this has nothing to do with what I think. This is the rules of engagement beyond what you think or you don't think, because that's where we agree to disagree. So morals would be outside of civility. That would be a good way to put this, is like, listen, I don't care what you think or you don't think, what you believe or you don't believe, but these are the rules of engagement. And civility would be a practical guide on how to interact with each other, no matter what we think, or our beliefs or our core values, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, I think we came up with something interesting here.
Yeah, that's a great point about civility being somewhere in between fight or flight. I didn't think about it that way, Lewis, but that actually makes a lot of sense. That's a good point. Once again, it's another idea that there is gray area. It doesn't have to just be one or the other.
And that way, we can transcend a little bit our beliefs, our core things. So I believe that this should be like this. This dogmatic things that we have about the way we think life is or should be or whatever. Okay, fine. That's outside of that booklet of human civility. Hey, I don't care what you think deeply about these issues or those issues. As a matter of fact, politics would be a very good description of civility. Democracy. I mean, it should be. It is not. It is not, obviously. But in a sense, how you conduct yourself and how it should be in that booklet of politics and civility, which goes beyond our core beliefs. I believe this, and life should be like this, and this should be okay. So that's where we agree to disagree, and we go by the majority. The norm, the collective, has decided to go like this in this way, and this law is going to be like that. Half of 49% of the people disagree with the law. But since we have the basic booklet of civility, we have to go by that book of civility. It would be kind of like the tool through which humans stop being animals.
What? Are you insulting animals?
Not in the sense that animals are bad. As a matter of fact, animals cannot be mean, but they fight or flight. They fight or flight.
Yeah, they definitely don't have the concept of civility. I mean, if one animal starts invading somebody else's animal, it's like, hey, can you please not invade my space? It's like, no, they attack.
That's
What
right.
about bees or ants? They seem to be very civil.
With their own.
They get along with each other.
With their own, yeah. It's because it's automatic. Their book of getting along in the beehive is phenomenal. There's no questions. Everything is right there. Everybody follows the rules.
So
there's no
what
questions
about
asked.
us? What makes us more civil than bees?
Well, we don't have the book of civility. We don't even teach that, as a matter of fact, in schools. We teach many things, but we don't teach how to. We should have a book of civility.
Well, isn't that what religions try to do?
No, right? That's the big difference. That's the big difference, because those issues.
Excuse me. What did he say? Isn't that what who tries to do?
Religions.
Oh, religion. Okay.
Well, it hasn't worked. Religions, as a booklet of civility hasn't worked.
Well,
I
Well,
think
when
the
you
religions
belong
is
to
more
a
like what you were
religion,
saying, the ant mentality. Like they're
Yeah,
civil with each other, but they're not
inside the
civil with
beehive. Yes,
outside.
that's right. So, and we cannot work like that as human beings because we're everywhere. So I think that this booklet of civility, and we could write one, the 9 participants here, or whoever is here, we could write a book of civility and come out of here and go, and anytime we see each other, we will know exactly what to do and what not to do.
We should.
It,
I mean, we're
it,
a bunch of humans living on this planet, and if we
right.
want to live on this planet and have a house and have nobody come into my house,
Right.
and I don't want to go into somebody else's house, like,
Or play
I
loud music. You know, when can we play loud music, if ever? You know, or
And not get shot.
what's that?
What happens when we've written our book and one of us doesn't like a certain part of it and is being rebellious? Do we become mean to them?
Well, because we live in a collective, you know, this is the social contract. The booklet of civility is the rules, the actual rules of how individuals play together in the collective. And of course, for example, snatching somebody's purse is not as part of the dues in the rule of civility. So we need to teach the individual. You don't snatch anybody else's purse, no matter what happens in your life.
maybe
Even
we
if you're
can start with
starving.
the rules, the civil rules that are not laws right now. Because I mean, there's a law that is supposed to take care of that. Stealing.
Well, that's the
you go to jail.
enforcement. But you know, it is somewhere where you cannot take somebody's purse no matter what. I don't know exactly where. Of course, the laws are so complicated.
You can't say
simplify
no
them.
matter what. You may have to take their purse because you're starving to death and you need to
Then it's gonna
survive.
be-
So you
Better
need to
way.
take
Like
a
if you
purse.
want to be
Free for all.
civil, how about you,
Right.
you know, go to a place where they actually hand out meals or they hand out food and say, hey, I'm hungry. Because I'm pretty
That's
sure
right.
that
That's right.
if somebody would have come up to her and asked her for $1 or I'm really hungry, can you invite me to lunch? She would have totally done it without having
Right.
to go to the extreme of taking her purse.
So it expands the book of civility to the concept of social contract. Very important, and we forget that. I think that one of my fundamental views is that there has to be a contract between the individual and the collective. Every time you have 2 people, you have to have compromise.
But doesn't that approach socialism or totalitarianism or yes
Yeah.
or
Hi,
wouldn't
Jairo,
that
you're gonna model this.
affect our rights, our freedoms?
You're
If
gonna
we
model
have a
this.
social contract, then we have to
Of course.
follow
Of course,
that book.
Of course, it
And
curtails your
what if
freedoms.
we're of another ethnicity and we rather do this or that differently?
Okay, so there you are. So that's why we have to have a social contract that has a book of civility.
Why do you say we have to have?
Because every time you get,
contract should cover all kinds of
Right.
people.
because if not, there is no contract. Because when 2 people get together, there has to be compromise, or it's fight or flight. It's either or. You cannot get along in the civility gray area and still have the fight or flight. So you have to have a compromise between the individuals within the collective. It's that simple.
You could have a war between the two when
The social the book of civility precludes wars.
you could have a civil war, a war that's conducted very civilly.
Okay, I give up.
Hyro, that's a point. That's a good point you make, Hyro. I like that point that you said. Why do we have to say that one way is right or the other way is wrong? When it's culturally, it can be that cultural barrier or what's common in one culture. But when you move to a different land, or anyone moves to a different land or migrate or even look to merge alliance, It's having that medium ground that keeps
There
the
you go.
peace and the unity. So for example, as it was mentioned before, in some other foreign countries where if someone steals, they lose an arm. And that's even common to this day. Middle Eastern, Africa, Asian countries, if you're stealing, they certain laws give you the right within villages and tribes to cut a person's arm off. But nevertheless, that's not an extreme measure that we use here in America. What do they call that? Petty larceny or theft, things of that sort, which will give them a jail time. But nevertheless, as well, if they're underage, they might get a break. But the point of the matter is this, is that I find it to be true and factual that any leadership, as far as them being prime ministers, politicians, are good politicians, good leaders, good presidents, good chiefs, are people who are willing to compromise, who are willing to integrate the cultures and say, you know what, I know we've been doing this for a number of years this way, but in this current state, because we want to safeguard our culture, because we want to see the children grow, because we want our women educated and sufficient and able to not only contribute to the household outside of being a homemaker, but if God forbid something happens to the man, they be able to financially support the household. We want them to be educated. We want them to be strong and well-rounded women. So we're going to change our cultural laws. We're going to change our culture aesthetics on the
Mhm.
top of the surface so we can be allies with other cultures, with other countries, but it's not changing the root of the culture. It's not changing the culture attire. It's not changing the culture language or these things that are very traditional and important to making the culture what it is. But it is vital to the thriving life of the culture. And I think that any good person would want to do that. Just to point out another fact of the matter is that someone mentioned some people don't know how to ask and don't know how to request, don't know how to request help. It's a great point to say that that's where we as individuals have to take the responsibility and say, you know what, if I ever encounter somebody that violated me or disrespected me, I'm not going to deal with it in a confrontational way or a harsh way. I want to deal with it in a way that will be a life lesson to them, that will build that person up, that will encourage that person or teach them right from wrong. And that's just us as individuals being tolerant, being willing to be a role model or influencer that is giving another chance to someone else.
Mhm.
I think that
Beautiful.
tolerant goes along with the civility. I think tolerance is a nice thing because
Yes.
it allows us to put a nice face on something that we might not agree with. And so we don't have to argue about it. We just tolerate it. We say, okay, you do that. A lot of people don't like tolerance because they want 100% commitment, but tolerance is better. It beats the fight or flight, I think.
Yep. I think we're coming up with a beautiful definition of kindness, which includes harmonic flexibility, tolerance, understanding, respect, compromise. Uh, I think we're getting there.
It's a lot.
What about, here's a question. What about the Afghanistani people that are refugee, that are maybe come to this country in thousands and then settle somewhere, and then would they be kind of, I guess, given, I guess they would get educated in English, but would their schooling also allow including being educated in their own language and culture to preserve it, or is that the domain of the parents only? Like
I can answer that
maintain
question.
their culture.
I can answer that question from the personal view, because I was born in Spain, Madrid, and when I was about 5 or 6 years old, my family moved to France, to Paris. My first day of school was in a French school. I didn't speak the language, so I can answer questions from the personal view on how someone can be transplanted to another culture and adapt to it, thrive in it, without losing the first culture or the first language, the first culture. And then after that, we did come back to Spain. After that, I ended up in the States, and again I had to remake myself in a sense, like a transformer. And so a Spaniard became a French, because when I was 12, I didn't even speak Spanish anymore. So I had been transformed into French, came back to my original culture, and then I ended up in the States, and I had to become American.
No, but what I'm saying is should the government that's taking on these refugees also include in their education the original language? Like should France have also taught you Spanish?
No, they didn't teach me any Spanish.
But
They
should
taught
they
me.
have? Like
No.
shouldn't that wouldn't that have been nicer or kinder of them?
Yeah, but because they didn't teach Spanish, and they taught French, I ended up speaking Spanish and French. And then here, I didn't expect anybody to teach me to speak Spanish to me or in French. I had to learn English. So as a result of that, I was able to leapfrog cultures and become comfortable wherever I go. And if I went to,
there are people that come to a country at a very young age, like 4 or 5, and I guess it's up to the parents to teach them their own language that they were born into. But shouldn't the country that's receiving them also support that education?
Should the world become all gray, all one thing, no cultures? Or should the individual within the colorful maps become gray and adapt to any? So we have all the colors of all the cultures inside us. Wouldn't that be the answer to getting along with anybody, anywhere, to being able to adapt and understand?
I mean, if you're putting it that way, it would put a lot of burden on the country receiving people, because if you get people from all these different cultures and countries, you have to find out about all these other cultures. And
okay,
right. So
if you're moving to a
about
new place because you hated the way that it was in your own culture, your
Right.
parents hated the way it was in your own culture, you're moving to a new place, you're leaving for a reason, and you want to learn something new, you want to learn that new place.
Yeah, it's like moving from the valley to the mountain and going, I want to change the mountain into a valley because that's where I come from. So I think it's much better for the individual and the collective to be able to move around and adapt to the environment rather than changing the environment because I'm moving into it. That's what we're doing to what we do to the planet.
State, the government that is giving education, it has taken over a land of people that had their own culture, like say Native Americans. Shouldn't that government provide education that's not just English, but also their own language and culture? Shouldn't they support that? Otherwise, that culture can die out.
The white man should have adapted to the Native Americans, and so that's the problem. Is you destroy the environment, and then you have to create another environment for the environment you destroyed. So it's better as a human being to adapt to the environment rather than changing the environment to where I go, because every time you change the environment, you destroy the ecology, whether it is social ecology, economic ecology, vernacular economy, anything, cultural, traditional, means, religious, etc., etc. If the individual were able to move and adapt around and leave the world the way it was, we would still be in the paradise in Eden.
Joel is in Canada. And who else
Guys,
is in Canada?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have
Oh,
to
Nancy's in
go.
Canada.
As
How,
much as
how
I-
is it done in Canada where you have a English culture and a French culture?
Guy-
Dominic is in Canada too.
Guys, I'm going to take this a little hiatus to say so long. This was very
you.
enjoyable.
Luis?
Very enjoyable. Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure meeting
See you,
all of you.
Luis.
This was a very refreshing conversation, and I enjoyed
Oh,
every
we're
bit
gonna
of
get
it.
kicked out in a minute, but we can join back in.
You take care, all of you, and I hope to see everybody next Saturday so we can finish or expand on this idea of kindness and compromise.
Before you go,
Yes.
is this an hour?